Holy relics have finally come to global, and with it a new boss fight that is a complete RNG cuckfest. Many people, myself included, have been mauling over clearing the first 2 floors, let alone all 3. But with SA6, it is much easier now. If you didn't summon on Bryn, this is currently the only other known team that has finished all 3 floors. Margaret and Sariel are both on an attack crit set. Green Healer Liz and Blue Deri are on an HP defense set. Use your highest attack links, and for Liz, I would use a Fat King regardless of his old level, at least for the first 2 floors. Even at 1/6, the increased heal provided by the Fate link is extremely beneficial, especially if you're missing the TC set. For Deri, use Tarmiel for his Grace, as she will be taking decent damage if you are consistently taunting. For the artifacts, the best set is the TC set, however I do not have that. A lot of people are missing that still. The Midgard set is probably the next best, and the 2 remaining cards, I just used something that gave all 3 stats and kind of rounded out all of them. The last thing you need to know is that when you do complete a floor, you will retain the same amount of health going into the next floor, similar to Guild Wars. So, the setup complete, let's get it. Alright, so coming into Phase 1 here, he doesn't do anything crazy hard. We can start just by dropping these attacks. We want to try to save all of our power strikes, as that's the only way that we can damage him on Phase 4. So if you don't have Sariel, your only other real viable option is Brynhilde, and if you didn't summon on her, you can technically use Lolly Merlin and 11, as they have power strikes. And then Cusack also has a power strike on his ultimate, but if you don't have Sariel, there's no way you would have summoned on Cusack, I guess. Turn 2, we kind of just do the same thing. We can drop all of our attacks, excluding power strikes. I do want to cleanse this bleed here, so we're going to cleanse first. Make sure you use your attacks after any kind of buff with Margaret on the team. Fully utilize her passive. We don't really need to get any ults or anything for Phase 1. He'll drop pretty fast at just normal attacks. So there isn't a type advantage or disadvantage when it comes to damage, but since naturally he wants to attack into green, he is going to focus Liz a lot. These 2 should be enough to kill, so I can just merge these and bring this over, I guess. Yep, so he's dead there. Phase 2, he doesn't really do anything stupid here either. Most of the time you can just one-shot with an ult. Though I do make a misplay here. I should have Deri taunted first. Like I mentioned earlier, you want to use your buffs and then your attacks. So I think if I had Deri taunted, I probably would have one-shot with Sariel there. But it's fine. So I could cleanse the bleed. He's starting to put some bleeds down. But I do have a second Margaret buff. So if you're actually able to get a rank 2 or even a rank 3 for the last phase, that's going to make finishing off a lot less of a hell. Looks like I was trying to figure out how to do this right, but I didn't. I decided not to waste the buffs like I just mentioned. Something is going to get wasted. if this attack doesn't kill, yeah, the Deri ult's gonna get wasted, but that's like the weakest thing here, so that's fine. Phase 3 is when it starts to get stupid. So if you check out his passives before the match starts, he can gain one of 3 randomly. So here he has DP's passive, where I have a reduction in crit resistance and crit defense. But he also gains Lolly Merlin's passive, where he only takes up to 30 or 40% of his maximum HP in damage. So the best way to kill him with that up is to just bombard him with ults. His attacks change also to buff strips, so if you can afford to not use Margaret's cleanse, like using Deri taunt is fine to taunt him off Liz for at least an attack, but you don't want him to completely strip Margaret's buff. Especially in this case now that we managed to get a rank 3. But he still does hit really hard. So I could probably just use the Deri taunt. He's stacking a lot of ignites on Liz. But again, wow, it looks like I do this. Oh, no, reset. Yes, make sure your buffs come first, Deri taunt first, and then attacks. So we're gonna move and use with Liz ults. We'll get Margaret ults, and then we also get Sariel ult. So these two, I believe, is enough to kill. I think the damage cap was around 150k. I didn't check his health, but just remember it's about 150k, at least for the first floor. For the second floor, he keeps that passive, but I think the damage cap is increased since he has more HP. So we just drop the ults. We could probably drop these. We don't need these. And just in case if the ults don't do enough damage, those will kind of peck them off. Wow. Exactly why we do that. Alright, phase 4 is when it gets fun. So you have to deal damage to him each turn, or he will drop a gray corrosion that does like 90% of your health. So we're going to open with a heal, top everyone up as much as we can. Margaret buff is the best case scenario of a gold. And then you want to space out your power strikes. You don't want to spam them in the event that you don't get another power strike or someone's ult. You'll be stuck with dealing no damage during a turn, and you'll get hit with the corrosion. It's also going to deal like very little damage now that we have a rank 3 buff up. But after 3 turns on the last phase, he will apply a gray infect where you can't heal. And then he also gains an attack boost. So preferably we want to finish the last phase within 3 turns. But it's really not, I would say, critical. It's just something we don't want to have to deal with. Now, since I have the gold Margaret buff, is the only way that that Margaret attack even did damage. And then again, the power strike. And we spaced them out enough for us to get our ults. And this is the 3rd turn, so we are going to finish on time without taking too much unnecessary damage. It's unfortunate I didn't get a Liz heal here. I could have topped everybody up. But everyone aside from Liz. Actually, I don't even think Margaret will get to ult here. Yeah, sorry, we'll just one-shot. Alright. So everyone's got a pretty good amount of health. So this is a really good transition into floor 2. So the first 3 turns of this second floor are going to look the same for their opening lines. Here we want to heal to top everyone up and get Liz ult, and then throw down Deri taunt. Now the boss here does have a debuff and a weak point attack, so if you don't drop the taunt, if his weak point attack crits, since it is single target, and hits Liz, there's a good chance she dies. I got a little lucky. It looks like he debuffed twice, but he can single target attack twice. So we want to clear off the debuff here with Margaret's Cleanse. We can Liz ult, and then start dropping some attacks. Now, one thing to remember is that he is going to maintain his passives from the first phase, which was the DP passive, and then he also retains the Lullin passive. So we have to do damage in increments, or not increments, we deal damage at the same amount. So turn 3, he does have 3 buffs, so you do need to buff strip him either with Liz or Deri. This is where Deri becomes marginally better than Diane, just because Diane doesn't have a buff strip, and you increase your odds of having one, you know, when you need it. Now, the tricky thing about transitioning is we absolutely need to have a taunt. So we had to use a taunt on the first turn. We want to stall out phase 1 as long as we can so that we can get a second or even a third taunt. And the reason is because on the second floor, he literally one-shots the whole team if you don't have a taunt up. So here we're just going to try to stall. We're going to cleanse off the bleeds. We're going to heal up, try to use our weakest attacks, pray that we draw into a taunt. We won't have a problem with phase 2. Looks like it probably can't stall any longer than that. So we will risk it for the biscuit. It looks like he does buff again here. What is this, turn 4? And we still have a Deri buff strip. But it doesn't really matter since he has like 1% HP left. We don't really want to get hit by that debuff and attack again, so we are just going to have to transition. We're going to throw everything down and hope we get a taunt. Phase 2, he gets a new passive. And we got a taunt. So that's nice. So the passive that he got was a buff cancel. He's going to strip literally everyone's buffs at the end of his turn. So with the taunt down, we want to start ulting. Again, we have a damage cap of 150. And he gets almost one shot. Since we got him down to about probably 5% HP, I'm not worried about drawing into a second taunt, since I know we can just kill him. And there's the attack. If you don't have a taunt up, you're dead. Otherwise, it'll miss. So I'm going to cleanse off the bleed. We do want to use extra attacks. We need to overkill him because he does have a revive. I think the revive is only like 5%. Literally 1%. But that will kill him down. So coming into phase 3, we want to make sure that we have a cleanse. He has an infect on the second turn, and that's going to prevent Liv's ult from popping off. So we have 3 cleanses now. So we're just going to try to play around those. You can drop your Deri taunts when you get them. We want to play with as little damage as we can early on. This phase we need to bombard with ults. The first hidden passive that he has is that when he drops below about 80% HP, I think, he gains a gray defense buffs. Now when he gets below about 50%, he switches to gray HP buffs. And then at 30% they are attack buffs. So here's the infect. We want to make sure that we cleanse it, and then we can Liz ult correctly, and then just drop some attacks. If these were power strikes, I wouldn't use them. The power strikes will deal too much. We don't want to get, we want to get them to above 50, and then one-shot them. So here's the defense buffs. We have 3 ults, so this should just kill. I do want to mention also that the HP related buffs increase his regen. So he's gonna gain, like, he gains an absurd amount of HP if you end a turn with those buffs up. Deri taunt down for the amplify, and we just go in for the kill. The damage cap increases to, looks like 166k on phase 3, so it's a little easier to one-shot. Phase 4, he gains another hidden passive. This one, he decreased damage that I dealt, basically. He just gets fucking tankier. Who would have thought? So here, again, we need to save our cleanses. He has an explosion debuff we don't want to mess with. So I'm just going to go for Liz ult, and like usual, Deri taunt when we can. That AoE actually chunked pretty good. Alright, so next turn is when he does his explosion. So we can drop Liz ult. We kind of just want to get everyone else's ult. We can probably ult cycle here, turn 4. Since I got the really tanky buff, that's kind of how I'm going to have to play it. Okay, so I can get Sariel ult, I can get Margaret ult. Here's the explosion debuff. Fortunately, I don't have a taunt up, so Liz is going to take some damage. She's already half health. Alright, so we are going to cleanse. At this point, I believe Margaret probably has max stacks in her passive. He does also buff his stats similar in the way that he did on phase 1, so we do want to keep at least one of these buff strips. I know I have 4, so I can just drop literally any of them. Do I merge? I don't remember if I merge here. I looked very indecisive. At least this phase 4 is a lot easier than the previous phase 4. He actually takes damage, even though he has a 40% increase on that. The only thing that sucks here is I'm not getting any Deri taunts. So Liz is really taking a lot of damage. Alright, so buff strip again, and then we can just drop these ults. And then we'll start going back for Liz ult. We'll start ult cycling so we can merge here. $112, $167. These do such little damage with this buff. I didn't get a Liz heal or a Deri taunt. I'm pretty sure Liz is coming close to death here. Yeah. So the other big issue about phase 4, as you can see, is if you don't have a Deri taunt, then he is going to drain Liz, and she will never get her ult off if he's constantly draining her. So we're gonna clear these explosions. Again, I don't think this buff is gonna be enough to keep Liz alive. Just gonna drop these attacks. And looks like we have Deri ult to finish, and a rank 2 power strike. I'm not overly concerned that Liz does die here. Unless you're transitioning into floor 3 and can, you know, make your way through that somewhat. I wouldn't be too worried about someone dying, especially if you're just farming the first 2 floors like I will. So he did drain, but we still have our rank 2 power strike. I believe with a martyr buff this will kill. Yup. There he goes. Alright, so that is the second floor done. So we went ahead and jumped into floor 3 just to show off something here. In the event that you misplay and you can't finish floor 2, or if you are goated enough you couldn't finish floor 3 because you misplayed or whatever, right now there is a little reset glitch where you can go back to the very beginning of the floor that you were on without having to replay from floor 1 again. So on the fail screen here, we don't press OK. We leave this up and we just close the app. We are going to log back in here. This login screen takes so long. Now, I also doubt that this is trackable by any means, and is a little less impactful than the raid glitch that they still haven't patched. But obviously I'm not saying you should use this glitch. Just be aware of its existence. So we come back and there we are. We have a full reset on floor 3 and our half dead team is still here.